The galaxy was quiet that day. Far beyond the bright core systems, in a cold and empty region of space, a small Imperial listening station floated in silence. The station was old, but its sensors were powerful. Its job was simple. It watched the dark edges of the Empire where almost nothing ever happened. Most days were boring. Lieutenant Carvin had been sitting at the sensor console for nearly 6 hours. Nothing moved in that sector except drifting asteroids and weak radiation storms. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. Another quiet shift. But then the sensor screen flickered. At first, it looked like a simple error. A small energy spike appeared on the outer edge of the sensor grid. Carvin frowned and adjusted the scanner. The signal appeared again. He leaned closer to the screen. "That's strange," he muttered. The signal was moving. Carvin activated the long-range sensors and focused them on the strange reading. The computer began scanning the distant region of space. A few seconds passed. Then the numbers began to change. Carvin sat up straight. The energy reading was increasing. Fast. "What is that?" he whispered. He called the station commander. "Commander, you need to see this." Within moments, Commander Howrex entered the control room. He walked calmly toward the sensor console. "What is it, Lieutenant?" he asked. Carvin pointed to the screen. "We detected a signal from the outer sector. At first it looked small, but it's getting stronger." Howrex studied the data carefully. "How strong?" Carvin swallowed. "It's increasing every second." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Zoom in." Carvin typed quickly. The long-range scanners pushed deeper into the dark region of space. The image slowly began to form. At first, it looked like random shapes. Then the computer started identifying objects. 1. 10. 100. Carvin felt his stomach tighten. The numbers kept rising. The computer voice spoke calmly. "Multiple large objects detected." Howrex leaned forward. "How many?" Carvin stared at the screen. "Thousands, and still counting." The room suddenly felt very quiet. The computer continued scanning. Object count increasing, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Carvin's hands began to shake. "This can't be right." Howrex turned toward another officer. "Run a second scan. Now." The second scanner activated. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then the results appeared. The numbers were the same. And still rising. The objects were moving together in formation. They were ships. A massive fleet was traveling through deep space. Howrex felt a cold chill run down his spine. "No Empire fleet is scheduled in that region," he said slowly. Carvin nodded. "And there are no warp gates nearby either." That was the impossible part. Every large fleet in the galaxy used warp gates or left clear jump signatures. But these ships had no jump trail. No warp energy. Nothing. It was as if the fleet had simply appeared in the darkness of space. The computer continued counting. Estimated fleet size, 100,000 vessels. Someone in the room whispered. "That's impossible. No known empire in the galaxy controlled a fleet that large." Howrex crossed his arms. "Identify the ships." Carvin activated the identification system. The computer scanned the hull shapes and energy patterns. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the computer spoke again. "Ship design recognized." Carvin's eyes widened. "Display identification." The screen changed. A symbol appeared on the hull of one of the ships. A simple white emblem. Howrex stared at it. He recognized that symbol. Every officer in the Empire knew it. The computer finally said the words. "Ship origin, human." The room froze. Carvin looked up slowly. That can't be right. Humanity was a small civilization on the edge of the Empire. Their fleets were limited and weak compared to the great powers of the galaxy. They only had a few hundred ships. Maybe a few thousand at most. But the fleet on the screen was hundreds of thousands strong. And it was still growing. More ships were appearing behind the first wave. Carvin whispered in disbelief. Where did they all come from? No one had an answer. The fleet continued moving forward in perfect formation. Its direction was clear. Straight toward the inner systems of the Empire. Commander Halrex felt something he had not felt in many years. Fear. He turned to the communication officer. Send a priority message to the Imperial capital. The officer nodded quickly. What should I say, Commander? Halrex looked back at the screen. Endless human warships filled the darkness of space. The message was simple. But its meaning was terrifying. Tell them, Halrex said quietly. We have detected a human fleet. He paused. Then he added the words that would soon shock the entire Empire. A very large human fleet. And it was still coming. The message from the listening station reached the Imperial capital within minutes. Inside the massive palace orbiting the capital world of the Zerath Empire, high-ranking officers gathered in the War Council chamber. The room was enormous, filled with glowing holographic maps of the galaxy. At the center of the chamber stood the Emperor himself. Emperor Valdros was known across the galaxy as a ruthless ruler. For nearly 2 centuries, the Zerath Empire had expanded without anyone stopping them. Thousands of civilizations had fallen under their control. So when the report about the human fleet arrived, the Emperor did not look worried. He looked amused. A young officer finished reading the message from the listening station. Estimated fleet size is currently above 100,000 vessels, and the number is still increasing. The room became quiet. Then the Emperor suddenly laughed. A deep, confident laugh echoed across the chamber. Human ships. Valdros said with a smile. That small species from the outer systems? Several admirals nodded. According to Imperial records, humanity had always been considered a minor civilization. Their territory was small, their fleets were limited, and their technology was average compared to the great empires of the galaxy. Admiral Corvin stepped forward. Your Majesty, it is likely a mistake. The sensors must be reading the numbers incorrectly. Another admiral agreed. Yes. Humans could never build a fleet that large. The Emperor sat down on his throne calmly. Then there is nothing to worry about. He waved his hand dismissively. Send the 7th Imperial Fleet to investigate. The 7th Fleet was one of the strongest forces in the Empire. It consisted of over 20,000 advanced warships, including massive battle cruisers and heavy dreadnoughts. For most enemies in the galaxy, even seeing the 7th Fleet was enough to force surrender. The Emperor leaned back and smiled. If the humans truly believe they can threaten the Zerath Empire, he said, then it is time they learn a lesson. Across the chamber, the holographic map zoomed in on the outer sector where the mysterious fleet had been detected. Thousands of small lights represented ships moving through deep space. But the officers still believed it was an exaggeration. Perhaps the humans gathered every ship they have, Admiral Corvin said confidently. Another officer chuckled. If that is true, then this will be their final mistake. Orders were quickly sent across the Empire. Within hours, the 7th Fleet began moving. Massive warships exited their orbital docks and activated their warp drives. Blue energy waves spread across space as thousands of Imperial ships jumped toward the outer sector. The Imperial commanders were calm. To them, this mission was routine. Just another small rebellion to crush. But far away in deep space, the listening station continued to watch the approaching human fleet. And the numbers kept growing. 200,000 ships. Then 300,000. The sensor officers stared at the screens in disbelief. "Commander," one of them whispered. Commander Halrex stood silently behind them. "Yes. The fleet, it's still increasing." Halrex felt a cold weight in his chest. "How many now?" The officer hesitated before answering. 400,000 ships. The control room became silent again. The human fleet stretched across space like an endless storm of metal and light. Rows of enormous warships moved in perfect formation. Behind them, even larger vessels slowly emerged from the darkness. Some of them were so large that the sensors struggled to measure their size. But the most frightening part was how organized everything looked. This was not a random group of ships. This was a planned armada. Meanwhile, the 7th Imperial Fleet was rapidly approaching the sector. Its commanders still believed they were going to face a small enemy force. None of them expected what they were about to see. Hours later, the Imperial Fleet arrived at the edge of the sector. Admiral Terex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars ahead. "Prepare long-range sensors," he ordered. The scanner activated. At first, the screen showed nothing but empty space. Then the computer zoomed in. Lights appeared on the display. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The admiral frowned. "Magnify the image." The holographic screen expanded. And suddenly the entire bridge fell silent. Because the screen was filled with ships. Endless rows of human warships stretched across the darkness of space. The Imperial fleet had expected a few hundred enemy ships. Maybe a few thousand. But what they saw was something completely different. A fleet so large it blocked the stars. Admiral Terex slowly stood up from his command chair. His voice became quiet. "How many ships is that?" The computer calculated for several seconds. Then it delivered the answer. Estimated enemy fleet size, 600,000 vessels. No one on the bridge spoke. The admiral stared at the screen. And for the first time in his long military career, he began to understand something terrifying. This was not a small human fleet. This was an army prepared for war. And it was heading straight toward the Empire. Far beyond the edge of the Empire, deep in the dark corners of the galaxy, humans had been preparing for this day for decades. No one knew it. Not the Empire. Not the other species. Humanity had appeared weak, scattered, and small. But that was a lie. A clever mask. Hidden from Imperial eyes, humanity built massive shipyards inside asteroid belts, dead planets, and clouded nebulae. No warp trails, no transmissions, no signs that could reveal their work. Only the humans themselves knew what was growing there. The shipyards were enormous. Some were large enough to build dreadnoughts the size of small moons, while others produced hundreds of fast-strike ships each day. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked together, training fleets, testing weapons, and building armor that could withstand the Empire's most powerful guns. In secret, humans studied the Empire. Every battle tactic. Every patrol route. Every weakness. They learned how the Empire thought, how it moved, and how it conquered. They recorded everything in massive data vaults hidden inside planets' cores and asteroid fortresses. For years, they waited. They trained pilots, designed weapons, and stockpiled munitions. Nothing was wasted. Every calculation, every blueprint, was part of a single, unified plan. Then came the day the Empire attacked a small human colony at the galaxy's edge. It was meant to be a warning, a lesson in obedience. But the humans had already decided. The Empire would pay. And the time to remain hidden had passed. Commander Leora, the leader of the human armada, stood on the bridge of the flagship. Her eyes scanned the massive holographic display showing hundreds of thousands of ships moving in perfect formation. Each vessel was ready, armed, and coordinated. "Our moment has come," she said quietly, her voice steady but full of determination. "We will not hide any longer. We strike now, and we strike as one." From hidden jump gates, ship after ship appeared. The fleet seemed endless. Thousands more arrived from distant star systems, each following precise coordinates. It was impossible to estimate the true size. Meanwhile, back in the Imperial capital, sensors still couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Commander," one officer said nervously, "there are more ships appearing behind the ones we just counted. Hundreds of thousands more." Commander Halrex swallowed hard. He had seen the first waves. He had thought the humans were limited. But now he realized the truth. Humanity had been building this fleet for decades. Entire generations had worked in secrecy. And now, they had unleashed it. The humans did not wait for negotiation. There were no messages, no warnings, no demands. They moved as one force, precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. Every ship knew its position. Every captain knew their orders. Every weapon system was primed to strike. And most importantly, every human knew one thing: the Empire had underestimated them for the last time. For centuries, the galaxy had laughed at humanity. They had ignored their warnings, dismissed their fleets, and mocked their weakness. But now, humanity's hidden strength was revealed. Across the Empire, the first Imperial commanders began to whisper among themselves. They built this in secret." "Yes," said another, voice trembling. "We never saw it coming. Not until now." In the darkness of space, the human fleet advanced, glowing engines lighting up the void like a river of fire. It moved with quiet certainty, unstoppable, inexorable, and precise. The Empire had believed itself invincible. But it had never faced humanity in full. It had never seen what humans could do when they were united, prepared, and determined. And as the first lights of the human fleet appeared on the Imperial sensors, one terrifying thought spread across every officer, soldier, and leader. The humans were ready. The Empire was not. The galaxy would soon witness something no one could have imagined. The secret human armada was no longer hidden. And it was coming for them all. The stars above the Imperial capital were cold and silent. For centuries, no enemy had dared approach this sector. The Zerath Empire believed itself untouchable. Their fleets were vast, their weapons unmatched, and their planets heavily fortified. But tonight, everything would change. At the edge of the capital space, the first signals from the human fleet appeared. Tiny blips at first, then hundreds, then thousands. The 7th Imperial Fleet was already in position, proud and confident. Their dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, and strike ships glimmered under the distant sun. Admiral Terex, standing on the bridge of his flagship, smiled. "Prepare to engage. Humanity has no chance." But as the human fleet drew closer, the illusion of safety disappeared. The humans did not attack like the Empire expected. They did not fire blindly. They moved like a single organism. Their ships formed precise formations, flowing around each other, surrounding enemy patrols before the first shots were fired. Shields at full power, one Imperial officer ordered, eyes wide. "Target their forward wing," another said. But the humans had anticipated everything. Energy pulses struck the Imperial fleet from multiple angles. Each wave of human fire was coordinated, exact, and devastating. Imperial shields failed in seconds. Weapons misfired. Systems overloaded. The capital's commanders could only watch in horror. "Withdraw. Pull back," Admiral Terex shouted. But the humans had cut off every escape route. Massive human dreadnoughts appeared from hidden positions in the darkness, blocking all warp lanes. Smaller strike ships darted between larger vessels, disabling weapons, engines, and communication arrays. The battle unfolded like a storm. In space, fire and metal collided, explosions blossoming against the cold black void. Imperial ships that had once seemed unstoppable were torn apart in moments. On the bridge of one Imperial flagship, officers scrambled to send distress signals. But the humans had already jammed communications. No messages could reach the capital. The Empire's largest fleets were disappearing before their eyes. Commander Halrex watched the battle unfold from a distant observation post. His stomach tightened. The reports were terrifying. Imperial forces across multiple sectors were being wiped out. Entire fleets vanished into the void. The Empire's systems were falling like dominoes. In the human flagship, Commander Leora stood calmly. She watched the assault, her fingers resting lightly on the control console. Focus on the key targets. Strike fast, strike precise. We leave no room for error. Her voice was quiet, but her order carried the weight of decades of preparation. Every human captain knew exactly what to do. Every ship moved in perfect sync. Their plan was unstoppable. By midnight, the Empire's outer defenses were gone. Imperial admirals were dead or in retreat. Communication with the capital had been cut entirely. And still, the human fleet advanced. Across the galaxy, observers from other civilizations could hardly believe what they saw. A species that had once been considered small, weak, and unimportant had mobilized the largest armada anyone had ever witnessed. And it was crushing the mightiest empire in the galaxy. Back in the Imperial command chamber, panic spread like wildfire. Officers shouted, guards ran, and the Emperor's calm face began to show cracks. The first explosions rocked the orbital defenses. Planetary shields flickered. Cities were evacuated in chaos. Humanity's fleet was everywhere at once, cutting down the Empire's heart before it could organize a proper defense. Admiral Terex realized the truth. Humanity was not just attacking. They were erasing the Empire. And in that moment, he understood something even more terrifying. The Empire had underestimated humanity for the last time. What had been considered a weak species, hidden in the outer rim, had revealed its full strength. And the Empire would never recover from this night. As the first human fleets crossed the orbital lines, firing massive plasma cannons and launching waves of fighter drones, one thought echoed in every surviving Imperial mind. This is the end. The stars burned with explosions. The darkness of space was filled with fire, smoke, and shattered metal. The Zerath Empire, which had ruled for centuries, was beginning to vanish, one system at a time. And humanity was only beginning to strike. By the time the first light of the Imperial capital's sun broke across the horizon, the galaxy had already changed forever. Imperial fleets that had once been considered unstoppable were gone. Entire star systems had fallen. The Empire's powerful war machines had been shattered in hours. On the bridge of the human flagship, Commander Leora watched the battle unfold with calm precision. She had seen her fleet execute decades of planning perfectly. The humans had trained for this moment for generations. Every strike, every maneuver, every attack had been calculated. And now it was complete. In the Imperial capital, chaos reigned. The Emperor's throne room had been evacuated as alarms blared endlessly. City after city on the capital world had been destroyed or captured. Orbital defense platforms exploded like fireworks, their debris falling into the atmosphere below. The Emperor, once proud and untouchable, now sat in a hidden chamber, staring at the holographic display. The numbers were impossible. His fleets were gone. His command structures were gone. His empire, the greatest the galaxy had ever seen, had been erased. Outside, the human armada filled the void of space. Massive dreadnoughts blocked every escape route. Smaller strike ships darted between the wreckage, destroying the remaining resistance with precise fire. Communications were silent. The Empire could not call for help. It could not even fight back. On the surface of the capital world, the people watched the sky light up with fire. Ships they had once believed impossible hovered above them, massive engines glowing like suns. Human pilots moved with deadly skill, their attacks swift and merciless. No one could hide. No one could resist. Humanity had come prepared for everything. From hidden jump gates and asteroid bases across the galaxy, additional human fleets continued to emerge. The Empire had thought it had seen the full Armada, but it was only the beginning. Millions more warships appeared from the darkness, surrounding every major Imperial world. By mid-morning, the Empire's central command had ceased to exist. Its leaders were either dead, captured, or in hiding. Planetary defenses had been neutralized. Imperial fleets had been annihilated in coordinated strikes that no one could have anticipated. The humans made no demands. They sent no warnings. Their message was simple and clear. This war ended the day you attacked humanity. The Empire had mocked humanity for centuries. It had believed humans were weak, small, and unworthy of attention. But now, the truth was undeniable. Humanity was strong, united, and unstoppable. As the smoke cleared from the capital world's surface, one truth became clear across the galaxy. The Zerath Empire no longer existed. Across distant star systems, civilizations that had once feared the Empire watched in shock. Entire fleets of humans had appeared out of nowhere. Generations of planning had culminated in this moment. And the results were absolute. Humanity had risen from the outer edges, underestimated and ignored, to become the most powerful force in the galaxy. Commander Leora looked out at the stars, her eyes calm but piercing. The fleet behind her stretched farther than the eye could see. She whispered quietly, almost to herself. They never knew, they never saw us coming. And she was right. No one had ever known where the human fleet came from. No one had suspected the full scale of human power. The galaxy had believed it could control humanity. It had been wrong. From that day on, stories would be told across star systems. Stories of the night the Empire vanished overnight. Stories of humanity's hidden fleets. Stories of a species that had been underestimated for centuries, until it was too late. The Empire had fallen. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. And humanity had claimed its place among the stars.